Part 1. The Peaceful Overture Captain. Jake Morrison stood at the huge window of the UES Harmony and watched Earth spin slowly below them. The ship was humanity's greatest achievement in the last 10 years. It was built for talking, not fighting. The hull had no weapons at all, just the most powerful communication systems ever made. Lisa Kane sat at her station and her hands shook a little over the controls. She looked up at Jake and said the signal was ready to send. This was not just any message. This was the first time humans would officially talk to the Zephyrian Coalition. The Coalition was a group of 6 different alien races that controlled a huge part of the galaxy. The main screen flickered, and Admiral Alex Turner appeared from Earth Command. His old face looked serious as he spoke to Jake. He said Jake understood how important this moment was. They had spent 5 whole years getting this peace offer ready. The Zephyrians had been moving toward human space, but instead of meeting them with weapons, humans wanted to offer friendship, trade deals, and shared knowledge. Jake nodded and told the Admiral that the message had everything they wanted to say. It contained human history, their real desire for peace, ideas for working together, and even showed their defensive abilities. They wanted the aliens to know humans were not weak, just choosing to talk instead of fight. The message took 47 minutes to send completely. It had cultural exchanges, scientific discoveries, art, music, and detailed plans for living together peacefully. Dr. Helen Brooks was Earth's top expert on alien life, and she had personally written parts explaining human biology and psychology. She hoped this would help the aliens understand humans better. Lisa announced the transmission was finished and now they had to wait. Commander Ray Douglas was in charge of ship tactics and he shifted uncomfortably in his chair. He asked how long it would take to get an answer back. Jake explained that based on where the aliens were in the Kepler system, it would take about 6 hours for their signal to reach them. Then they would need however long it took the aliens to think about it and decide what to say back. Those 6 hours felt like forever. The crew moved around doing their jobs, but everyone was nervous. This was humanity's big moment. This was their chance to join the galactic community as equals instead of being conquered and ruled by others. The ship was quiet, except for the usual humming of machines. People spoke in whispers as if talking too loud might somehow ruin their chances. Jake walked the halls and saw the same worried look on every face. Some crew members tried to eat, but food tasted like nothing. Others tried to read or watch entertainment programs but could not focus on anything except waiting. Dr. Brooks sat in the science lab, going over the message again and again. She wondered if she had explained human emotions clearly enough. Did the aliens understand that humans could be both gentle and fierce? Did they know that humans valued freedom above almost everything else? She had tried to show them human art and music to prove that humans were not just warriors, but also creators and dreamers. In the communication center, Lisa ran diagnostics on all the equipment for the 3rd time. Everything was working perfectly, but she needed something to do with her hands. The waiting was the hardest part. She kept thinking about all the things that could go wrong. What if the aliens did not get the message? What if they got it but did not understand it? What if they understood it but did not care? Commander Douglas was in his office looking at tactical displays even though there was nothing to see. Space around them was empty, except for a few mining ships in the distance. He had been a soldier for 20 years, and this was harder than any battle he had ever fought. In a fight, you could do something. You could shoot back or move to cover or call for help. Here, all they could do was wait and hope. When the response finally came, everything changed in seconds. The main screen crackled and showed a creature that looked like a giant lizard with dark, cold eyes. Its voice came through their translation computer in perfect English, but the words were like ice water in their veins. The alien said that humans had sent their offer of peace and it had been received and looked at. Their answer was simple. Humans must surrender all their star systems to Zephyrian rule within 30 days or face complete destruction. The alien said humans showed promise as workers. If they obeyed, some of them might survive as servants. The transmission ended suddenly and the bridge became completely silent. Nobody moved or spoke for several seconds. The words hung in the air like poison. After 5 years of preparation, after 47 minutes of sharing the best of humanity, after offering friendship and cooperation and shared knowledge, the aliens saw humans as nothing more than potential slaves. Jake felt his hands close into fists and his jaw clenched tight. The anger was like fire in his chest, but he kept his voice steady when he told Lisa to open a channel to Earth Command with the highest priority. Admiral Turner's face appeared again on the screen, and Jake could see the same rage burning in the older man's eyes. Jake reported that the aliens wanted humans as slaves. After everything they had offered, their knowledge, their friendship, their cooperation, the aliens saw them as nothing more than servants waiting to be claimed. Turner understood immediately and told Jake to prepare for immediate return to Earth. It seemed humanity would have to teach the galaxy a different kind of lesson. As the UES Harmony turned toward home, Jake thought about what came next. For 5 years, humans had prepared for this moment, hoping for the best but ready for the worst. They had offered their hand in friendship and had it slapped away with contempt. They had shown their culture and science and art only to be told they were good enough to be servants but not equals. The aliens had made their choice, and now humans would make theirs. The peaceful approach had failed not because humans had done anything wrong, but because the aliens could not see past their own arrogance. They looked at humanity's offer of peace and saw weakness instead of strength. They looked at the desire for cooperation and saw submission instead of wisdom. Jake knew that everything would change now. The careful plans that had been made in secret would finally be used. The hidden preparations that leaders had hoped would never be needed were about to become humanity's salvation. The aliens wanted to see what humans were really capable of, and soon they would get exactly what they asked for, though the galaxy was about to learn that rejecting human friendship was the biggest mistake the Zephyrian coalition would ever make. Colonel Dan Parker stood in the war room deep under the Rocky Mountains, surrounded by glowing displays that showed star maps, ship locations, and factory numbers. The room buzzed with people working as humanity's best military, minds planned for a war none of them had wanted, but all of them had expected might come someday. General Linda Hayes walked into the room carrying reports, and Dan asked for her update. She told him that all defense stations were working and ready. The mining facilities in the asteroid belt had been changed to weapons factories just like they planned. Their secret protocol had worked perfectly because every civilian installation had military blueprints hidden in their designs from the very beginning. Dr. Kevin Clark was the head of Earth's Weapons Research Division, and he stepped forward with a dark smile on his face. He said the Zephyrians had made a big mistake by giving humans 30 days to surrender. In 30 days, humanity could do things that most alien species would think was impossible. The display changed to show Earth's ability to build things for war. What the aliens did not know was that humanity had been getting ready for this possibility for many years. Every space station, every mining operation, every research facility that looked peaceful had been designed to serve two purposes from the start. Dan asked about Project Reaper, and Dr. Michelle Gray stepped forward to answer. She was the lead scientist on the project, and she changed the display to show sleek black ships coming out of hidden construction areas. She said they had finished the first group of Wraith-class stealth destroyers, and each one carried enough antimatter weapons to crack open a moon. The Zephyrians would never see them coming until it was too late. General Hayes wanted to know about the bigger picture, and Colonel Steve Martin pulled up information about fleet sizes and compositions. He explained that the aliens thought they were dealing with just one planet, but they did not know about human colonies in Proxima Centauri, Wolf 359, and Barnard's Star. Each colony had been building ships in secret for the past 20 years, while pretending to be simple farming and research outposts. Dan smiled in a way that was cold and frightening. He said the Zephyrians had studied humanity's peace offer very carefully and learned about human culture and desires for harmony. What they failed to understand was that humans had another side that they really hoped they would never have to show anyone. The display showed pictures from human wars throughout history. There were ancient generals who won battles through brilliant planning, factories that produced weapons faster than anyone thought possible, and the stubborn determination that made humans never give up even when everything seemed hopeless. Dr. Clark continued by saying, the aliens thought they were fighting farmers and artists, but they did not realize they were about to face a species that had been perfecting the art of war for 10,000 years. Every human conflict had taught lessons that were remembered and passed down to the next generation. Captain Amy Rodriguez had just returned from a secret mission to watch the alien fleet, and she joined the group. She said she had observed their ship movements and they were approaching with standard formations. They used no stealth technology and no advanced tactics. They truly believed this would be a simple occupation of a weak planet. Dan asked how many ships the aliens were bringing, and Amy answered 200 vessels. She said it was impressive for what they thought would be a police action, but completely inadequate for fighting humanity when humans were serious about war. General Hayes called up the final display, and it showed humanity's real military strength. Hidden shipyards revealed thousands of vessels that had been built in secret over many years. Defense platforms that had pretended to be research stations powered up weapon systems that were more advanced than anything the aliens had ever seen. Civilian transport ships shed their fake outer hulls to reveal assault carriers loaded with fighters and marines. Dan said quietly that the Zephyrians had wanted to know about human defensive capabilities in the peace offer. Humans had told them the truth about what their orbital platforms could do and how their shields worked. They just had not mentioned anything about their offensive capabilities because nobody had asked, and humans had hoped those weapons would never be needed. Dr. Gray's face became deadly serious as she explained something else the aliens needed to understand about humans. Humans remembered everything that happened to them. Every insult, every threat, every act of aggression was stored in human memory and passed down through generations. Humans had very long memories, and they never forgot when someone wronged them. The room fell silent as everyone thought about what was coming next. For decades, human leaders had hoped this day would never arrive. They had built hidden fleets and secret weapons while publicly promoting peace and cooperation. They had trained soldiers and developed new technologies while sending messages of friendship to any aliens who might be listening. Dr. Clark brought up another display, showing human military doctrine that had been developed over centuries of warfare. Humans had learned to fight in space, on planets, in asteroid fields, and even in the strange environments around black holes. They had studied every possible type of combat and prepared for enemies they had never met, but knew they might face someday. Colonel Martin explained that human military planning was different from other species because humans assumed their enemies would be smart and dangerous. They prepared for worst-case scenarios and built multiple backup plans for every possible situation. When humans went to war, they brought more ships than they needed, more weapons than seemed necessary, and more determination than their enemies thought possible. Amy Rodriguez added that the Zephyrian fleet was moving exactly like the computer models had predicted they would. The aliens were following standard military procedures that humans had already studied and learned to counter. They were walking into traps that had been planned years before first contact was ever made. General Hayes looked around the room at all the displays showing hidden fleets, secret weapons, and battle plans that covered every possible situation. She said it was almost sad that the aliens had forced humanity to reveal all of this. Humans really had wanted to be friends and partners in exploring the galaxy together. Dan nodded and said that humanity had offered the Zephyrians everything they could want. Advanced technology, new trade opportunities, cultural exchange, and alliance against common enemies. Instead, the aliens had demanded slavery and threatened destruction. Now they would learn what human peace looked like when it was rejected with contempt and arrogance. The displays around them showed final preparations being made across the solar system. Hidden bases activated, secret fleets moved into position, and weapons that had been disguised as research equipment powered up for the first time. The aliens wanted to see what humans were really capable of, and very soon, they would get exactly what they had asked. For Dan gave the order to begin Phase 1 and told everyone it was time to show the galaxy what human peace looked like when friendship was rejected for slavery. Admiral Jack Phillips commanded the hidden human fleet from the bridge of the UES Vengeance, a massive warship that had been built in secret over 15 years. Around him, his crew worked with the precision that came from a species that had turned fighting into an art form that could be taught and learned. Navigator Chloe Adams reported that the Zephyrian fleet had entered the outer edge of the solar system, and they were keeping their standard formation, just like the computers had predicted they would. The aliens were following their military handbook exactly, and had no idea they were flying into carefully planned traps. Jack asked if there had been any response to humanity's final warning message, and Communications Officer Pete Wilson shook his head. The aliens were ignoring all attempts to talk, and their lead ship had just broadcast another demand for immediate surrender of all human worlds and colonies. Jack's old face became hard as stone. The Zephyrians had been given every possible chance to avoid this fight, Humanity had offered them peace, partnership, shared technology, and even some compromise on territorial disputes. The alien response had been arrogance and demands that humans become slaves to serve their empire. Jack ordered a channel opened to all human vessels using authorization code Omega-7, which meant that the real war was about to begin. The main screen filled with dozens of ship captains, each commanding vessels that the Zephyrians did not know existed anywhere in the galaxy. Captain Nicole Foster commanded the stealth carrier UES Shadow. Commander Frank Roberts had the heavy cruiser UES Retribution, and Captain Gary Lewis controlled the experimental warship UES Nightmare. All of them were waiting for orders to begin the attack that would change galactic politics forever. Jack began speaking to all the captains, and his voice carried the weight of humanity's anger at being rejected and threatened. He said the Zephyrians had made their choice by rejecting peace and demanding enslavement. Today they would remind the galaxy why humans should be feared when they were pushed too far and forced to fight. The first part of the battle began with what looked like a simple defensive action. Earth's orbital platforms opened fire on the alien fleet with conventional weapons that the Zephyrians could easily deflect. The aliens blocked the attacks just as human war planners had known they would. Tactical Officer Karen White reported that the aliens were taking the bait perfectly. The enemy formation was getting tighter as they prepared for what they thought would be an easy victory over a weak planet with primitive technology. What the Zephyrians did not realize was that the orbital platforms had been deliberately firing at much lower power than they were capable of. The weak attacks were designed to make humanity appear weaker than they actually were, so the aliens would move closer and bunch up their ships. Jack commanded Phase 2 to begin, and suddenly space around the alien fleet filled with ships that had been completely invisible just seconds before. The Wraith-class destroyers appeared from stealth technology, having positioned themselves perfectly, while the aliens approached Earth thinking about easy conquest. Each destroyer fired a coordinated attack of antimatter, torpedoes that moved faster than the aliens could react. The lead Zephyrian ship was a massive carrier that simply stopped existing. One moment it was there commanding the fleet, and the next moment it was an expanding cloud of hot gas and metal pieces. 6 more ships followed within seconds as the torpedoes found their targets. A panicked transmission came from the alien fleet asking where those ships had come from. The aliens had been watching space around Earth for hours, and had seen nothing that could threaten their powerful warships. Captain Foster's voice came across the communication system announcing that Shadow Squadron was in position and launching assault craft. From the stealth carrier came what looked like a swarm of metal insects, hundreds of small fighters that could move in ways that defied what the aliens thought was possible. Each fighter was piloted by humans who had been training for this exact moment their entire lives. They were descendants of humanity's greatest pilots, carrying on traditions of air combat that went back to the earliest days of flight when humans first learned to fight in the sky. Lieutenant Tony Bell led the first fighter squadron and opened his communication channel to the alien fleet. He told the Zephyrian vessels that they had wanted to see human defensive capabilities, and now they would get to experience human offensive ones instead. The fighters moved in patterns the aliens had never seen before. They used coordinated attack tactics that had been developed from studying everything from ancient cavalry charges to modern air combat. They struck with surgical precision, targeting weapon systems and engines to cripple ships rather than destroy them completely. Commander Roberts brought the UES Retribution alongside a massive Zephyrian battleship and simply rammed into it at full speed. The human vessel had been designed with reinforced ramming equipment hidden beneath its hull plates, and it tore through the alien ship like it was made of paper. Another alien transmission came through saying this was impossible because their intelligence reports had said humans only had defensive capabilities and no real military force. Admiral Phillips smiled in a way that was cold as winter and ordered a channel open to all remaining Zephyrian vessels. His image appeared on every enemy ship at the same time as he prepared to deliver a message they would never forget. Jack told them he was Admiral Jack Phillips of the Human Defense Fleet, and they had come expecting to find a weak species ready for conquest. Instead, they had found something much worse. They had found humans who had offered peace and friendship, only to have that offer thrown back in their faces with contempt and threats. The battle was already over, even though some fighting continued. Of the 200 Zephyrian ships that had entered the solar system, fewer than 50 were still able to function, and those were heavily damaged and defenseless. Jack continued speaking and told the aliens they had two choices. They could retreat immediately and tell their coalition exactly what had happened here, or they could stay and discover why every successful species in the galaxy had learned to fear human determination. When humans were angry, there was a long pause before the alien fleet commander responded. The voice sounded shaken and confused as it said this could not possibly be humanity's full military strength. Jack's smile became even colder as he told them they were absolutely right. This had been just the local defense force that protected Earth and the inner colonies. He asked if they would like to meet humanity's actual military forces that were stationed in other parts of the galaxy. The remaining alien ships began retreating immediately without another word. They had learned that rejecting human friendship was the biggest mistake their species had ever made, and now they had to go home and explain that to their leaders. High Admiral Zexthai of the Zephyrian Coalition stood before the Grand Council, with his usually proud posture bent by the weight of terrible news. The circular chamber fell completely silent as representatives from 6 different species absorbed the impossible reports that made no sense. According to everything they thought they knew, the council included the reptilian Zephyrians, the crystal-like Quell, the insect Vrak, the water-breathing Merdan, the energy beings called Flux, and the plant-like Sylvani. All of them had been part of the coalition for hundreds of years and had never faced a defeat like this. Councillor Veltar of the Quell demanded an explanation from Zexthai about how an entire fleet had been destroyed by a species they had classified as primitive farmers and researchers. Her crystal body pulsed with angry red light that filled her section of the chamber. Zexthai activated the holographic display in the center of the room and showed recordings from the battle. The images were hard to believe even when seeing them directly. Human ships had appeared from nowhere, attacked with devastating precision, and used tactics that turned certain victory into complete defeat. The recording played and showed the moment when human vessels materialized from empty space, the surgical accuracy of their attacks, and the tactical brilliance that had made 200 coalition ships look like children playing with toys. Councillor Vexra of the Vrak clicked her mandibles in agitation and said this was impossible. Their scouts had observed human technology for months before the invasion. They had seen farming equipment, research stations, and civilian transport ships. Nothing had suggested advanced military capabilities. Zexthai replied grimly that everything they had observed was apparently disguises. Every civilian installation their spies had watched was actually a military facility. The research stations were weapons platforms, and the mining operations were ship construction yards that had been building war vessels for decades. Councillor Morden of the Merdan spoke from his water-filled suit and asked if Zexthai was telling them that humans had fooled their entire intelligence network across multiple star systems. The bubbling in his suit showed how upset he was at this possibility. The Flux representative was a being made of pure energy contained within a special field generator. It spoke in musical tones and said analysis of the data indicated systematic deception across multiple decades. The level of coordination suggested that the entire human species had been planning for galactic contact and possible war. Elder Sylvani Grutanara was ancient even by her species' long-lived standards. She rustled her leaf-like body parts thoughtfully and asked what they had missed when studying humanity's peace offer. The humans had sent detailed information about themselves, so where had the coalition gone wrong? Zexthai changed the display to show sections of humanity's original transmission that had taken 47 minutes to send. He explained that humans had been completely honest about their defensive capabilities. They showed exactly what their orbital platforms could do, demonstrated their shield technology, and even revealed their small fighter craft. The problem was that the coalition had assumed that was everything humans possessed. Veltar demanded to know if that assumption had been wrong, and Zexthai confirmed it was completely incorrect. What humans had shown them was perhaps 1% of their actual military strength. They had been preparing for galactic contact for generations and had built plans for every possible situation, including exactly what had just happened. The display changed again to show intelligence. Reports that were flooding in from across the galaxy. Human ships had appeared in dozens of star systems and they were not attacking anyone. They were simply observing and making their presence known to every species that might be watching. Bexra asked how many ships humans actually had, and her tone suggested she was afraid to hear the answer. Zexthai said conservative estimates suggested over 10,000 combat vessels, with more being built every day. Humans had established colonies and military bases in at least 12 systems that the Coalition had never known existed. Their ability to build things appeared to exceed the Coalition's own industrial capacity. Elder Grutnara's ancient voice carried a note of grudging respect as she said, humans had planned for war while offering peace. She admitted this was impressive even if it was also terrifying to think about. Morden's suit systems gurgled with anger and he said humans had deceived them completely. The flux being responded in harmonious tones that review of the data indicated humans had provided accurate information about defensive capabilities and peaceful intentions. They had simply not revealed offensive capabilities when offering to avoid conflict. Zexthai nodded slowly and explained that humans had never actually lied to the Coalition. They had offered genuine peace, real cooperation, shared technology, and mutual benefits for both sides. When the Coalition rejected that offer and demanded human surrender, humans had simply revealed what the Coalition had forced them to become. The chamber fell silent as the full implications became clear to everyone present. They had been offered partnership with a species that could have been the most valuable allies in galactic history. Instead, their arrogance and demands for submission had created what might become their most dangerous enemy. Zexthai continued with even worse news. Humans had sent a message to every known species in the galaxy, sharing what had happened along with a simple statement. The message said the Zephyrian Coalition had been offered peace and chose war instead. Other species did not need to make the same mistake if they were smarter. Beltar's crystal form flashed brilliant red as she realized humans were turning the entire galaxy against the Coalition. Zexthai confirmed it was worse than that. Humans were offering alternatives to every species. Any world that signed a peace treaty with humanity received access to their technology, their trade networks, and their military protection. In just 1 week, 17 independent worlds had switched their loyalty from the Coalition to the Human Alliance. Elder Grutnara spoke slowly with each word weighted by centuries of wisdom. She said they had made an error that might doom their entire coalition. Humans had offered them exactly what they should have wanted, which was a powerful ally. Instead, they had demanded a slave and created an enemy that might destroy them. Morden asked what she recommended they do now, and the ancient Silvani rustled thoughtfully. She pointed out that humans were still broadcasting their original peace offer on all communication channels. Perhaps it was not too late to reconsider their response and try to fix their terrible mistake. But even as she spoke, long-range sensors detected massive human fleets moving through space and no longer hiding their strength. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity's greatest weapon was not their technology or their ships. It was their ability to remember exactly how they had been treated, and to make sure everyone else remembered it too. 1 year after the failed Zephyrian invasion, Ambassador Laura Martinez stood in the Grand Assembly Hall of New Geneva Station, humanity's first diplomatic outpost in neutral space. Representatives from 47 different species had gathered for what historians would later call the Treaty of New Geneva, the document that would reshape galactic politics forever. Laura announced that the session would come to order, and her voice carried clearly through translation systems that now connected dozens of alien civilizations. Behind her, the flags of every attending species created a colorful display that represented the galaxy's new direction toward cooperation instead of conquest. Admiral Jack Phillips now served as humanity's military liaison and watched from the observation deck as former enemies and new allies took their seats. The Zephyrian delegation, led by a quiet High Admiral Zexthai, sat far from the human representatives, a reminder of how drastically power had shifted in just 1 year. Before formal proceedings began, Laura said she wanted to address the elephant in the room, or perhaps she should say the human in the galaxy. A ripple of translated laughter moved through the assembly because even species that did not naturally laugh had learned to appreciate human humor over the past year. Captain Amy Rodriguez now served as Director of Human Intelligence Services and stepped forward with information. Over the past 12 months, humanity had made contact with 317 different species. Of those, 312 had signed peace agreements with Earth, Trade had increased by 4,000%, and galactic conflicts had decreased by 67%. Ambassador Krell Toth of the Hegemony Worlds asked about the remaining 5 species that had not signed agreements. His mechanical voice translator gave his words a metallic sound that echoed in the large chamber. Laura's expression remained diplomatic, but her eyes showed steel as she explained that those 5 species had chosen to test human resolve in various ways. Those conflicts had been resolved quickly and decisively. All 5 species had since requested inclusion in humanity's peace initiatives after learning what happened to those who chose confrontation over cooperation. Dr. Helen Brooks now served as Earth's chief xenobiologist and cultural exchange director. She activated a holographic display showing the galaxy's new political map, with different colors showing alliance relationships. She said what they were seeing was unprecedented in galactic history, because for the first time, a single species had united more worlds through diplomacy than through conquest. Counselor Veltar of the Quell observed that humans had backed that diplomacy with overwhelming force. Her crystal form pulsed with respectful blue light because the Quell had been among the first to abandon the Zephyrian coalition after witnessing human military capabilities. Admiral Philip spoke from the observation deck and confirmed this was true. But he said humans had also backed their diplomacy with something more powerful than force, which was genuine benefit. Every species that had allied with humanity had seen improvements in technology, trade, security, and quality of life. High Admiral Zexthai rose slowly from his seat, looking much older than he had a year before. The weight of his species' mistake was etched deeply into his features, and he asked for permission to address the assembly. Laura nodded and said the floor recognized High Admiral Zexthai of the Zephyrian Coalition. His voice carried across the hall through translation systems that were themselves a gift of human technology. Zexthai began by saying his species had made a grave error. They had been offered partnership and had demanded submission instead. They had been shown peace and had chosen war. The consequences had been educational in the most painful way possible. He activated his own display showing the current state of the Zephyrian Coalition. 40% of their member worlds had left to join the Human Alliance. Their military strength was a fraction of what it had been before the failed invasion. Their economy had collapsed without access to human trade networks and technology. Zexthai continued and said that despite this, humans had not pursued total victory against the coalition. They could have destroyed the Zephyrians entirely, but instead they waited patiently. They offered the coalition the same choice they offered everyone else, which was cooperation or isolation. Elder Grutnara of the Silvani spoke, and her ancient voice rustled like wind through leaves. She said humans had proven something the galaxy thought was impossible. They had shown that a species could be both genuinely peaceful and utterly terrifying at the same time. They had offered real friendship, but when that was rejected, they had demonstrated why friendship was the wiser choice. Ambassador Krell leaned forward in his mechanical suit and said the question before them was simple. Should they formalize what had already become reality by recognizing the Human Alliance as the galaxy's dominant political entity? Laura raised her hand and said with respect that Ambassador Krell had misunderstood humanity's position. Humans did not seek dominance over others. They sought cooperation for mutual benefit. The Human Alliance was not about human rule, but about voluntary partnership, where everyone gained something valuable. She gestured to the diverse assembly around them and explained that every species present maintained their independence, their culture, and their government. What they shared was a commitment to peaceful resolution of conflicts, open trade, technological exchange, and mutual defense against common threats. A representative of the warrior clans of Rigel asked what would happen if someone threatened that peace. His scarred face showed genuine curiosity about human intentions. Admiral Phillips smiled grimly and said, then they would learn why every species in the room had chosen cooperation over conflict. The smile was not threatening, but it carried the memory of what had happened to those who had tested human resolve. The vote came, and it was unanimous. Even the Zephyrian coalition, reduced as it was, chose to join rather than face continued isolation. The Treaty of New Geneva established humanity not as galactic overlords, but as coordinators of the largest voluntary alliance in known history. As the ceremony concluded, High Admiral Zexthai approached Ambassador Martinez privately. He asked if this had always been humanity's plan to conquer the galaxy through kindness, backed by overwhelming force. Laura considered the question seriously and said no. This had not been their plan. Their plan had been genuine peace, and everything else, the military preparations, the hidden fleets, the contingencies, had been insurance policies. They had hoped they would never need to use them. Zexthai asked if humans had been prepared to use those weapons, and Laura said, absolutely. Humans had learned long ago that if you want peace, you must be prepared for war. The tragedy was that his coalition had forced humans to prove that lesson to the entire galaxy. As delegates departed New Geneva Station, returning to their home worlds with news of the new galactic order, one truth had become clear to every species. Humanity had taught them something valuable about war by showing them that the most dangerous enemies are those who genuinely want to be friends but are absolutely prepared to be your worst nightmare if you force their hand.